Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent computer role-playing game. This week I'm taking a look at one that I meant to cover some time ago, but never got around to, but I have finally. And I guess it's technically an RPG, although it kind of strains that kind of definition. Moonlighter is a roguelite shop manager action RPG developed by Digital Sun and published by 11-Bit Studios. It was released back in May of 2018. Moonlighter is an underutilized subgenre of roguelikes that I am fond of, which involves not only delving into randomly generated dungeons, but then selling the findings in a shop in town. It uses a pixel art style for its presentation and has a stat system that relies on a gear and upgrade-based progression rather than utilizing experience and leveling. In terms of plot, Moonlighter simply starts you off in the action. You play the part of a merchant named Will, who has inherited the town of Renoka's general supply store, Moonlighter. The town is situated by an archaeological excavation that hosts a series of gates to various dungeons. You soon learn that these dungeons may hold the key to unlocking the final gate, and that the town pretty much depends on the retrieval of various material and cultural artifacts from the dungeons, but that those gates have been mostly closed due to the danger that they pose. Although no one explicitly commands you to go into the dungeons, the natural course of finding stuff to sell and upgrading your shop will eventually have you delving ever deeper into them. When you first create the game, you select a game type, with New Game Plus being unlocked after you finish the game. You then select a difficulty level and are dropped directly into play. There are 3 main game modes: the town, the shop, and the dungeon, but more on that in a bit. First, let's take a look at the character and basic interface. Will has 4 primary statistics: health, attack, defense, and speed. Health is represented by hit points, attack represents potential damage done, defense represents potential damage absorbed, and speed represents how fast Will can move around on the map. Will can also equip 2 weapon sets, both of which may be toggled between, as well as 3 types of armor: chest, head, and boot armor. He may also equip 2 rings or accessories and 1 potion type. There's also a gold total that accumulates as you sell items and purchase upgrades. There are also other items and artifacts that grant additional abilities. An amulet that lets you teleport home for some gold, another that creates a 2-way gate that lets you go back to town and costs even more gold, and a mirror that allows you to cash in items for below market value instead of simply deleting them, and so forth. Will also has a number of inventory slots to carry things back that he finds. 5 of these are on his person directly, while the rest are his backpack. The main difference is that items on his person are not generally lost when he is defeated, and may carry over if he restarts a run, whereas items in the backpack are lost. You can sort the backpack according to what item value to make a determining what to keep and what to throw away a little bit easier, but the presence of curses on items that you find can add some complexity to this. Aside from the basic character stats, you can also access an in-game calendar, a wish list of items that you wish to craft, and the components that they take to make, as well as a notebook. The notebook is potentially the most useful of the subscreens because it organizes things you find in the dungeons by where you find them and how much their general value should be. It's up to you to find out the specific values, but it does keep note of what reactions you've had selling the items at each price point, how popular that item is, and any bits of lore that may be associated with that item. This is quite important as there are a ton of items, and remembering the price point of each one can be tricky. Items generally have 4 reactions when they are sold that they can garnish: a real bargain, that means you're pricing the item way too low; a happy price, where the characters will purchase the item readily; an unhappy price, where they'll purchase it if they need to; and finally a price that is simply too high and they won't purchase at. As you find the highs and lows along the price line, the listed prices in your notebook automatically adjust, at least with normal customers. There are different customer types that may pay more for certain items, but I'll brush over those when I get to the merchant mode. During each day, you wake up in the morning and may spend time as you will between 3 different modes of the game. Some modes are unavailable or more limited during certain hours. For instance, running around town during the day will allow you not only to talk to many NPCs and visit other shops you've invested in, but if you try the same at night, you may find yourself unable to invest in upgrades, and if there are far fewer NPCs wandering around at night to speak with. Let's take a look at the town mode, since that's the easiest to cover. Basically, when you are not in the dungeon or tending to your shop, you can wander around town. The town has a decent-sized map, and it may have wandering NPCs that clue you in onto the lore of the town and the dungeons and develop as you do. You may also perform a few upgrades here. Near your shop, there's a corral which can hold pets and companions that you uncover during your adventures. These may range from reactivated drones to little pet slimes, each of which follows you around and may have special abilities or attacks. The second major thing here is the town notice board, which is really more of an upgrade shop. Here you may manage your investments. You can invest in or upgrade either the town or your shop. Investing in the town basically consists of paying other merchants to move in. Yes, this includes ones that may be considered a competitor, although most simply provide different useful crafting outlets. There's an armorer that lets you make new weapons and armor, a witch that crafts potions and may enchant your weapons and armor, a retailer that sells items that you would otherwise just find, albeit for an exorbitant fee, a banker that allows you to deposit money and let it earn interest, and a hawker that sells objects that you can decorate your shop with, which may provide unique bonuses. You may also upgrade your store here. This includes basic floor plan upgrades that improve the space and functionality of your shop, as well as specific upgrades to 4 categories of items. The sale box to provide discount stuff for clearance, cash register upgrades to earn more money, bed upgrades to give you a temporary health pool at the start of each dungeon crawl, and finally, personal storage space. Most other shops in town are pretty self-explanatory, although the forge and witch both allow you to craft gear. In this case, gear is assorted to a type, and there may be different tiers of that object. Each requires a certain amount of money to craft, as well as items that you find in the dungeon. This item requirement can serve well to keep you from upgrading out of your particular dungeon tier. There are different types of weapons and a few different types of armor. The different types of weapon offer different attack and defense modes, while the different types of armor modify your ability scores. Heavier armor tends to be much more protective, but also makes you much slower. Every armor and weapon type has different upgrades based on the dungeons that you've unlocked, and thus the material you have access to, while weapons actually have 2 different upgrade paths each, one with raw damage and one with a stun effect. This simple tiered upgrade system can thus represent a number of different playstyles, from a quick archer type to a heavily armored slugger, and everything in between. It makes for a decent amount of variety of tactics overall. The next section of the game, and arguably the core fun part of the game for most, is the dungeon section. Outside of town, there are a series of gates, each leading to a different dungeon. Each dungeon is themed and its own set of enemies and culture, and drops within them reflect that. Each dungeon has a series of randomly generated levels, each tending in towards a mini-boss, and then an overall boss at the end. As you defeat each dungeon's main boss, the next dungeon is then unlocked. Dungeons consist of randomly generated layouts of rooms, each a single screen in size. Rooms may have layouts that are generally chosen from a series of templates and may include pits and other hazards, as well as a selection of monsters from that dungeon tier. The monsters generally remain the same over the course of a tier, although they do grow increasingly powerful, and there are a certain number of certain types of monsters that only show up at lower levels of a particular dungeon. Occasionally, the rooms are generated that have non-combat decorations, some of which may have books and notes of lore, some of which may contain items and artifacts. There may also be pools of hot spring water that refill hit points to a limited degree. Usually, these pools seem to be near the mini-boss rooms, but not always. The objective is simply to kill monsters and evade any traps, then loot them. You go from room to room collecting treasure and items until you A. meet a mini-boss or boss, B. get killed, or C. gate or teleport back to town. Gating can be generally preferable if you're looking to make progress, as this will allow you to resume where you left off. However, teleportation can be key if you've picked up any items of value and you know you're about to die. The combat is action-oriented, requiring quick maneuvering, dodge jumps, and use of the various weapon attacks and defenses that you can pull out. I personally found it fairly challenging, more suited for a gamepad than the keyboard I was using. But of more challenges, the real puzzle of the dungeon: inventory management. Since the whole purpose of dungeon delving is to find items to sell in your shop, you're naturally going to want more valuable items, but this is somewhat complicated by a host of factors. There's the limited inventory space, of course, and the fact that you'll lose most generally unequipped inventory stuff on death, but there's also the matter of curses and needed upgrade materials. If you're looking to upgrade your gear, you're going to be wanting particular items, some of which may be rare drops, and some of which may just be cheap. So if you want to progress, you're going to have to be sure not to ditch/leave behind these upgrade materials. Artifacts can be cursed as well. Curses may take on a number of forms, ranging from simply hiding the object's nature until you leave the dungeon or limiting it to one area of your backpack, to having the effects on other artifacts, generally denoting what artifact will have that effect with a particular direction. Most of these effects are bad or limiting, but some may be useful. For instance, some curses send an artifact they are placed near back to your home in town as soon as you place them in your backpack, while others may convert an object in a certain direction to copies of the cursed artifact once you return to town, which can be truly useful when it's on a pricey artifact and you happen to have a whole stack of miscellaneous junk stuff. The final major part of the game is the shopkeeping. The shop has 2 rooms, the bedroom and storage, and then the main storefront. The bedroom has a bed to lay in to close a day up and go to the next morning, a personal chest to store your personal inventory, a shop inventory chest for, keeping your shop inventory, and you may acquire more of these later on, and also have items sent into those shop inventory chests. The journal, where you can track your progress in unlocking the boss gates, and then the main storefront. The main storefront has spaces to display and sell items and a cash register, while later upgrades also add places to shop decoration and possibly a for sale bin to sell things at a discount. Before you open for business, you may place items from your inventory into the display slots and list the price you wish to charge. This is on a per unit basis, so you can put an entire stack on a spot and then the overall price will be adjusted according to that per unit basis. Invariably, a customer will purchase the entire stack at once. Items can be looked up in the notebook directly from your item placement screen, so you can adjust prices accordingly. Once you're ready to open for business, you can simply go to the front door and hold the key to exit down rather than just exiting. This will open up the shop for the day. This can only be done during the daytime, as the shop will not stay open much past dark. You can close the shop at any time by simply repeating this process. Once open, the time begins to pass a little bit more quickly and potential customers will walk in. Customers will generally mill about for a while before going to inspect a particular item on a table. After a moment's consideration, you'll be notified of their reaction. This will include whether the item is in demand and, whether they are happy or not with the price, according to the various levels that I mentioned earlier. If they are willing to buy it, they take the purchase to the register and wait, and then you'll have to go check them out. Item price can be adjusted even while customers are browsing, and items can be restocked or more placed out during business hours, although having more than that one starting floor space table will help more customers identify more items more quickly. Furthermore, customers will only stay in line to purchase items for a set amount of time, so if you get a lot of customers, you'll want to be checking them out as quickly as possible. There are a few different types of customer that may be unlocked depending on town and shop upgrades. Wealthy customers may be willing to pay more for what catches their eye, while some NPCs will come in looking for particular types of items. At the end of the day, or whenever you have closed the shop, you are given the total sold for that day and it's added to your coffers. All in all, the game has a pretty solid little loop of dungeon crawling, item valuation, selling, and crafting. As for the graphics, interface, and music and sound, it does use a consistently pleasing pixel art style that's not really retro, but rather a really nice aesthetic choice that suits the game well. The interface is at once busy and minimalistic, providing the minimal information that you need, but cramming quite a few operations into what screens they are so as to minimize the overall back and forth between different menus. The music is outstanding, and this is one of those games where the music is both suitable for the setting and genre and good enough to perhaps merit listening to outside of the game proper. Overall, I found the dungeon crawling part fairly decent. It's a competent little action roguelite, although I would have liked to see more variation in the rooms at large. The limitation is understandable given the overall presentation and doesn't detract too much. The game is a little bit grindy when it comes to working for upgrades, but again, not too much, at least in my opinion. Some may differ. I do wish that Moonlighter managed to kick more of the overall game mechanics into gear a little bit faster, but it doesn't really detract from the game if you're playing it for the long run. About the only part of the game that I was really disappointed in was the shopkeeping aspect. I mean, it's alright enough and suits its purpose, but every time I spent, tending the shop, I couldn't help but wish I was actually playing Racketeer instead. There are some concepts in the shopkeeping that are great on paper, like item demand and some special customers, but I think it fell short in comparison. Granted, if this is the first sort of game in this genre that you're playing, you'll probably won't notice that. Despite this, Moonlighter is a neat little title, even if it's barely an RPG. I look forward to playing it a little bit more, and I will note that this review did not include material from the Between the Dimensions DLC. Apparently that DLC does address some of the issues that I've brought up, but from what I understand it also introduces other issues, so I decided to just take the look at the base game. And on that base game, I do recommend it, but that comes with two caveats. First is that it is a little grindy even for a roguelite. Second, if you've played and enjoyed Racketeer, this game does that, but Racketeer is pretty much better in every way. Well, almost every way. So if you like the game, I would recommend waiting until you pick it up on sale or pick it up on another platform than PC that doesn't have as much access to other games of the genre. There is definitely some there, but perhaps not as much as I would have hoped. And on that note, I'll leave it off on that. As always, I'll put a link to where you can get this in the description below. This has been the RPG Crawler with Indie Game Friday Moonlighter. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye. And if you're still watching this far, I'd like to take a moment to thank those who have supported this channel via Patreon or direct donations throughout the years, without which this channel could not have lasted as long as it has. For those who are feeling particularly generous, you can still support my work through Patreon and now through Subscribestar as well, through the links in the description below.